Hello, good afternoon, welcome back to Premier League Dad. It's the Game Week 23 prediction show where we'll be taking a look ahead at all the big talking points in this round of Premier League fixtures this weekend. Let's take a look. So first up, we're going to start at the Vitality Stadium in what is the game of the game week for me. Bournemouth against Nottingham Forest. Probably the two form teams in the Premier League, let's be honest. I think Bournemouth are unbeaten in 11 in all competitions. Nottingham Forest unbeaten in 9. I mean, Forest are third at the moment, but a win here, depending on what happens in the 5:30 between City and Chelsea, which obviously are teams just immediately below Forest. Forest could be as much as 9 points clear of Manchester City in 5th. That's quite a cushion on those Champions League places. And if you're a Forest fan, if that was to play out today, you would have to feel increasingly confident that actually you're going to be playing Champions League football. You're going to be hearing that anthem at the City Ground next season. You know, and equally for Bournemouth, for them, a win in this one puts them level on points with Chelsea. Again, going into that 5:30 game at City, which is going to be a massive one as well. But depending on what happens in that one, they could be level on points with 4th. Again, Champions League football, just within touching distance of the Vitality Stadium. Unbelievable for both of these teams. Like, it's so delicately poised, and it's a really interesting one. I genuinely can't pick a winner in this one. And it's curious, actually, that the bookies have made Bournemouth favourites in this one, which I suppose is odd, given that Forest have the second best away record in the Premier League behind Liverpool. Bournemouth have an average home record. I think they've got the 9th best home record. And Forest, you would expect, would come into this one with massive confidence. I mean, both sides will, of course. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the bookies seem to be backing Bournemouth in this one, despite where the two teams are in the league. They may be able to pick a winner. I certainly can't. I'm 100% going to have to sit on the fence on this one. I can't see past a draw. I think there'll be goals in it. I don't. Will it be... No, I'm not going to go Desmond. I'm not going to go 2-2. I'm not going to go 2-2. I'm going to go 1-1. And the reason I'm going to go 1-1, despite both of these sides being involved in high-scoring games last week, 5 in the game at Forest, 5 in the game at St James's Park with Bournemouth and Newcastle, I think both managers privately will acknowledge that a draw's not a bad result here against this side. And both managers will probably try to sit deep and hit on the counter-attack, and they might just cancel each other out. So I wouldn't actually rule out a 0-0, but I think both sides have got goals in them. Both sides got lots of pace going forward, and they might just pinch one on the counter each. So I'm going to go 1-1, Nottingham Forest to get a big point away at the Vitality. And a game that not that long ago we would have all gone... Just looks like a bottom of the table clash, that one. Now all of a sudden, it's a game between two sides. Two of the most interesting, exciting sides to watch. Chasing Champions League football. Would you believe it? Fantastic. That's how the Premier League works. That's why we love it. That's why I do this channel. So, I'm going to go 1-1. I'm going to go Bournemouth 1, Nottingham Forest 1. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Put your predictions in there too. I want to know them. And yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. Next up in the Saturday 3 o'clocks is two teams that have just turned a corner. Brighton v Everton at the Amex. Now, Everton haven't got a bad record at the Amex. They haven't lost there since 2019. But I just can't see anything other than a Brighton win in this one. I think those back-to-back away wins at Portman Road and then obviously last week away at Old Trafford will just be massive for Brighton. It will give them huge confidence coming into this one. I actually thought Brighton were really sound defensively against Manchester United. I mean, they scored 3 goals, which is always difficult at Old Trafford, but that was great going forward. But they looked like they had real control at the back, and that'll give them massive confidence because they've not had that, I don't think, in a lot of games this season. That's been something that's missing. I mean, we already know that Brighton are a difficult team to beat. They come into this one with a run of 1 defeat in their last 9 games. But the frustration for Fabian Hürzeler has been that there's been lots of draws along the journey. They've drawn with the bottom 4 sides, Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton and Wolves. And also the teams just above them, West Ham, Brentford. Those are the teams you have to be beating more often than not. But I'm going to back them to get the win against Everton. And the reason I say that is because Goals are a real problem for this Everton side. Yes, they got 3 last week against Tottenham, albeit Spurs had to put one of them in their own net. But that's the anomaly, isn't it? That is the anomaly for this Everton side. They do not score 3 goals in a game. That's the outlier as far as the data is concerned. They just don't hurt teams often enough going forward, Everton. Unless it's a set piece. And I know Everton, look, this is a new era, it's a new manager, David Moyes, it's not Sean Dyche anymore. You know, David Moyes is a pragmatist too, isn't he? He's very much in the mould of Sean Dyche. You know, he'll want to keep it very, very tight at the back. He won't be taking many risks at all going forward, I would imagine. Because he knows his players. He knows that, they've not got an awful lot of pace going forward, Everton, and they're very vulnerable to transition through the midfield. They don't really have legs in midfield most of the time. And actually, that's going to be a real problem, I think, going to Brighton. Brighton are very, very strong in transition. Very, very good counter-attacking side. So I think that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go Brighton 2, Everton 1. I think Everton will come into this one with a lot of spirit. You know, David Moyes is a very good motivator. He'll get the team up for it. And they started that Spurs game really, really well. So I would imagine that they start this one very strong. It wouldn't even surprise me if they took the lead. But as good as they are defensively, they're very well organised. You know, they'll remember some of those lessons from Sean Dyche. They'll be very well drilled at the back. I still think Brighton make it count in the end. I think 1v1 individually, Brighton are just stronger. I think they're quicker. I think they've got better players across the pitch that can hurt Everton. And yeah, I can't see past the home win in this one. So I'm going to go for both teams to score. Brighton 2, Everton 1. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Get your predictions in. Next up in the Saturday 3 o'clock kickoffs is Liverpool against Ipswich Town at Anfield. And you've got to say, with Arsenal and Forest both having tough away games, this is an opportunity for Liverpool to maybe stretch their lead at the top of the Premier League. There's potentially a bit of history to be made in this game, of course, because if Liverpool can avoid defeat, then this would be the longest unbeaten run in Liverpool's entire history. 18 games, I believe. And what a record, what an achievement that would be for Arne Slot in his first season. And I do think we'll see that record broken. However, any Liverpool fans who are under the impression that this is going to be a walk in the park, a 5 or 6-0, the same as City did with Ipswich last week, I think you're in for a shock. I think they might give us a run for our money. It wouldn't even surprise me if it was 0-0 at half-time, just as it was in the opening day of the season when Liverpool went to Portman Road. Obviously, in that one, of course, it took goals from Salah and Jota in the second half to take the game Liverpool's way. But I think it's going to be much closer than maybe the City game was for Ipswich last week. You know, Kieran McKenna will be saying to his players, just go out there and enjoy the day. It's Anfield, it's a massive occasion. You know, all the pressure is on them. All the pressure is on them. Nobody's expecting you to get anything. Even a point. Even if you just run them close. If this is 1-0 Liverpool, everyone will be saying how well Ipswich has done. So you've got nothing to lose. Just go out there and enjoy it. You might not even be playing at Anfield next season. He'll also be saying the longer this stays nil, this crowd will just start to, groan at misplaced passes, and they'll be urging them to push forward, and they'll start to get a little bit frustrated. And actually, from my experience as a Liverpool fan, it's these sorts of games where Liverpool labour. These are the games where we don't tend to batter these teams 6-7-0 in the way that City tend to. These are the games where Liverpool are 0-0 in the 85th minute. Same as we saw against Brentford last week. It really wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool leave this late. So I do think Liverpool will win, but I've got to say as well, I think Ipswich can really hurt Liverpool. They've got lots of pace in attack. They've got Delap, Hutchinson, obviously no Smodics for this one, but they have got Enciso, who's just come in on loan from Brighton. Those are players that absolutely can hurt Liverpool on the counter-attack, and although I don't expect Kieran McKenna will take too many risks going forward, they'll get their chances. They will get their chances. So I think it's going to be a much closer game than many people are giving Ipswich credit for. So I'm going to go 2-0. I'm going to go 2-0, Liverpool 2, Ipswich Town 0. Arne Slot breaks the record. Both teams stay where they are in the Premier League table. Let me know what you think. So next up is Southampton against Newcastle United at St Mary's, and this run is just not getting any easier for Southampton, is it? They've won once in 22 Premier League games this season. That was before Christmas against Everton at home. And I've got to say, they have looked better under Ivan Djuric. The performances have certainly improved. There seems to be a bit more of a spirit there. You know, and you could reasonably argue they should have got something in their last 2 games. 2 tough away trips against United at Old Trafford, and then the City ground last week, Nottingham Forest. They were very close to doing so. Spirited performances in both, but just individual errors. Again, the tale of Southampton's season, messing around with it at the back and shooting themselves in the foot again. So even though Newcastle come into this one off the back of a hiding against Bournemouth at St James's Park last week, I have no faith in Southampton to get anything in this one. I actually think a point would be remarkable. So I fully expect Eddie Howe will get Newcastle back to winning ways and keep the pressure on Chelsea and City in that 4th spot, especially with the game at 5:30, and I just can't see anything other than a Newcastle win here. I actually think it might be a comprehensive one. So I'm going to go for Southampton 0, Newcastle 3. Newcastle are just too good going forward. You know, with the likes of Gordon and Isak, I can't see Southampton keeping them out. So I can see them scoring at least 1, maybe even 2 as an absolute minimum. And Southampton are the lowest scorers in the league. So, you know, I fully expect that Djuric will set them up in a low block to hit Newcastle on the counter. And they might just cause Newcastle some problems. Again, they're a spirited side. They still have got quite a lot of energy about them. And they might cause Newcastle some problems in the early parts of the game. But Newcastle's quality will just tell in the end. So, yeah, Southampton 0, Newcastle United 3. Let me know in the comments what you think. So the final 3 o'clock game on Saturday is Wolves against Arsenal at Molineux, and I said in my earlier video, this one has all the makings of a banana skin for Arsenal. And the reason I say that is because although Wolves have lost their last 3 games on the bounce against Nottingham Forest at home, away to Newcastle, away to Chelsea, the performances have actually been very, very good under Vitor Pereira. Yes, defensively their shape is all over the place at the back. They lack any real leadership and organisation back there, particularly on set pieces, which doesn't bode well with Arsenal coming to town. But going forward, they are hurting teams. Very, very good teams as well. Forest, Newcastle and Chelsea. Good defences, top defences. They're causing them lots of problems going forward, and they've just missed some really big chances in big moments. They've hit the bar numerous times. I sound a bit like a broken record because I've said this about Wolves in the last 2 match previews, I think. But I just feel like it's coming. A big performance is coming. They've got Arsenal this week. They've got Villa the next game week at Molineux again. And I just feel like there's a big performance coming in one of those 2 games. I don't know why. It's just a gut feeling. I've no idea why. But I fancy Wolves to get something in this one. Arsenal struggling going forward. You know, Mikel Arteta's come out and said that today, I think, or yesterday. He's come out and given an interview saying that the lack of goals, the lack of a threat in the final third is a real problem for Arsenal. And it might just start to tell. It wouldn't surprise me, by the way, if they went to Wolves and wiped the floor with them. They could easily beat Wolves 4 or 5-0. But I just think there's something in me that says that Wolves are going to get something in this one. It might even be copium because Arsenal are chasing Liverpool down for the title, and maybe I'm just hoping that they drop points. Sue me. But I just can't shake the fact that Molineux is a very tough place to go. I think this whole Matheus Cunha thing will have galvanised the Wolves squad. You know, the manager coming out and calling his best player, saying to him, your body language isn't good enough. It's just not good enough, and I'll accept it this time because you're a captain, you're a leader in the dressing room, but I will not accept that going forward. That takes some cojones to say that in public about your best player. And I feel like that might just bring the Wolves squad together. Maybe Matheus Cunha too. It might just light a fire in his belly. You know, they can certainly hurt Arsenal, and everyone's expecting an away win here. So I'm not gonna go with the crowd on this one. I'm gonna go for Wolves. I'm gonna go 2-2. I'm gonna go Desmond. I'm gonna go Wolves 2, Arsenal 2, high scoring game. Let me know what you think. Could Wolves pinch it? So next up is the big 5:30 game on Saturday, Manchester City against Chelsea. I've got to admit, after watching City destroy Ipswich 6-0 last week, I did think they'd just turn that corner. I did think that was a turning point for City's season, and actually now they'd kick on and we'd see the best of them again. But then that PSG game in midweek has absolutely thrown me, because they just absolutely capitulated, and we've seen this from City now many times this season. It's starting to become a pattern. It feels like a mentality issue within that squad, which is so unusual for Pep Guardiola's teams. So unusual for this City team. You know, we know those players so well, but they just feel so vulnerable. they were 2-0 up, and then as soon as Dembele scores to make it 2-1, you could see it. You could see the shoulders drop, and they all become they look timid, they look scared, and they made it 2-2 shortly afterwards, and after that it was just a formality. It seemed like it was always going to be PSG's night after that. I just think this is a City side that's desperate for some fresh legs, some fresh bodies coming into the team, some newness, some energy to it, and maybe Marmoush and Kusanov can bring that. It wouldn't surprise me if one or maybe even both of those start this one. I don't know if they're able to due to international clearance, but certainly Marmoush, I think, can bring something to that City attack and maybe a bit more resilience about them. Pep Guardiola can't afford for this to keep happening because this is a massive game. They're 2 points behind Chelsea. They need to win this one, to be honest, to start thinking about Champions League qualification next year. I mean, there's a chance they don't make the knockout stages of the Champions League, which is insane in itself, but they might not actually make the competition proper next year if they're not careful. They really need to start pulling the finger out, and I think that might just bring out the best in City in this one. I'm hesitant. I'm very, very hesitant. But Chelsea was so bad against Wolves. How they made it 3-1 and won that one. I think recently, in general, Chelsea have been very poor. That win on Monday Night Football was Chelsea's first win in 6 Premier League games. Going back to, Goodison Park, they drew 0-0. That was a game they should have lost, to be honest. Everton should have won that one at the end. Then they lose at home to Fulham. Then they lose away at Portman Road at Ipswich. They drop points at Selhurst Park. They almost get beat by Bournemouth at Stamford Bridge, and then flatter to deceive against Wolves on Monday Night Football. So I'll be honest, I just don't think that Chelsea are performing anywhere near as well as they can. I just think the performances for Chelsea going back to before Christmas have been as bad as the results, to be honest, and I can't really say that for City. I think City have had some bad performances in that run, don't get me wrong, but City have also put in some really, really good performances, and also some good performances where they've not got the win. I think Brentford, they played quite well, and then they were just sloppy at the end. So this is a game where, to a degree, we've got two sides who are phenomenal on paper, look brilliant, lots of individually strong, talented players, but actually form-wise, they're both all over the place and both look very, very vulnerable. So I think we might see an odd scoreline in this one. I can't explain why, it's just a gut feeling based on how inconsistent these two sides have been for some time now, but also the quality within their ranks, and also, by contrast, how big this game is for both teams. So, this is going to sound like a weird one, but I'm going to go Manchester City 5, Chelsea 2. If that comes off, I am basically a mystic at this point. You watch it be 0-0 now. Let me know in the comments what you think. On to Sunday's games. It's Crystal Palace against Brentford at Selhurst Park. Something tells me this one's going to be a low-scoring one, and the reason I say that is because, firstly, Palace have won their last 3 Premier League games to 0, and they've been much, much better defensively recently. I also think that Brentford are going to be... They're a bit low on confidence. They've won 1 game in their last 9 Premier League games, and although they can certainly hurt the opposition, I love Brian Mbeumo. I think he's a top 6 player, to be honest. I love, they've got Johan Wisser up there, they've got Schade up there, they've got lots of pace that can hurt Palace. Of that, I've absolutely no doubt. Palace have become a very difficult side, not only to beat, but just to score against. They've conceded 2 goals in their last 6 games in all competitions, and they're unbeaten in those 6 games as well. Even if you go back further, they're 1 defeat in their last 11 Premier League games. They're tremendous at the back recently. Very, very strong. Gay, Lacroix, and prior to that, Chalobah, obviously, before he got called back to Chelsea. But they're a very, very strong unit at the back, and I think Brentford are going to find them very difficult to break down. And more to the point, that front 3 of Sarr, Mateta, Eze just looks different class, doesn't it? Mateta is on a scoring run of, I think it's 4 goals in his last 3 Premier League games. So, again, I said it last week, you'd be a brave man to back against Mateta scoring in this one, and I just can't see past a Palace win. I've got to say, I think Brentford are in a difficult moment. They're 12 points off the relegation places. That's far enough away that they're not going to have to worry about getting dragged into that mess. But they're also sort of 10, 11 points off the European places, so they can't really go up or down. They're out of both cup competitions, and it just feels like they're going through the motions a little bit. I think they're in a bit of a transition phase, Brentford, because there's some players there who maybe are on the cusp of leaving. There's been rumours about Wissa this week, and Bournemouth certainly. I just wonder how they get themselves up for a game like this. For Palace, it feels a little bit different. It feels like there's a buzz around the place, and it feels like that they do have a point to prove under Oliver Glasner. So I can't see past a Palace win. Also, that's not factoring in that Brentford have I think only Southampton have a worse away record than Brentford this season. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going to go for a Crystal Palace win. Not to nil. I think Brentford might just nick one, so I'll go 2-1. Crystal Palace 2, Brentford 1. Next up on Sunday is Tottenham Hotspur against Leicester City, and this is about as big as it gets for Ange Postecoglou. It's a must win. Anything other than a win here is just a catastrophe as far as Spurs are concerned. They have to start moving up the table. That first half away at Everton last week was a disaster for Spurs, going in at half-time 3-0 down. Obviously, they come out the second half and they look a little bit better. They maybe should nick a point at the end. And then they've gone away to Hoffenheim in Europe in midweek and got the win there as well. That'll have given them a real morale boost. And although I've said in recent videos that I do think Spurs will just slightly turn their focus to those cup competitions, which is, understandable because that's their best chance of success this season. They're in the semi-final of the League Cup. They're flying in Europe. This is their best chance of getting some silverware this season. And in the league, they're 14th. They don't look like they're going anywhere, really. So they're certainly not going to trouble those European places, you'd have to think. But I do think there comes a point, maybe not just yet, maybe now it's just a little bit too soon, but very soon there will come a point where Ange Postecoglou just starts to think about maybe resting players and rotating his squad for these Premier League games, ready to keep them fresh for the big cup games in midweek. As players, it's a very threadbare Spurs squad at the moment with all their injuries. You might just take your eye off the ball in these games, especially if you've got one eye on that cup competition in midweek. So there's certainly a chance for Leicester to get something in this one. But I think for Leicester, the performance in this one just has to be big. They have to turn up to Spurs. If they were to lose this one, it would be 8 defeats in a row, which would be a club record, I'm led to believe, and I don't think Ruud van Nistelrooy survives that. I've said in some recent videos that I don't think he's really improved Leicester. I don't think he's changed the shape, how they set up. I don't think in terms of mentality or attitude, I don't think the application's been all that different. And I think that's really telling. Last game week, they got beat against Fulham 2-0 at home, and they didn't really lay a glove on Fulham. And allegedly, after that game, Van Nistelrooy had an angry exchange with his players. And if Ruud van Nistelrooy is looking for a blueprint on how to get a result away at Tottenham, then he needs to look no further than a fellow newly promoted side, Ipswich Town, who obviously came here famously earlier in the season and got a win. So, and after 7 defeats in a row, Leicester probably won't come to Spurs with confidence per se, but they should come without fear, definitely without fear, and with the right attitude, they can have hope that they can get something. But I've got to say, when push comes to shove, I don't think that they do. I think Spurs just about get the job done in the end. I think they'll labour to get it done, but they certainly will get it done. So I think I'm going to go Tottenham 2, Tottenham 3. I'm going to go Tottenham 3, Leicester City 1. I think this might just spell the end for Ruud van Nistelrooy as well, and maybe Leicester look back into the manager market again to try and salvage their season. Next up on Sunday is the John Duran derby. It's Aston Villa against West Ham. West Ham obviously making a £60 million bid for John Duran this week, a player that they chased in the summer, of course. A player that I think privately, maybe even a little bit publicly, has let it be known to Unai Emery that he wants to leave. He wants to go and be a starter, a regular starter somewhere. And who could begrudge him that? He's been terrific off the bench. Whenever he's played for Villa, he's been a match winner. He's come off the bench and been terrific for them, and he's not going to get in ahead of Ollie Watkins, at least not consistently. But West Ham, understandably, are going to have to pay top dollar to get him out of there. He's a top striker. Will he play in this one? That's an interesting one. Will he play against potentially his future employers? I watched the FA Cup game between these two at Villa Park a couple of weeks ago, and I've got to say, I don't think Villa were great, especially in that first half. It was Graham Potter's first game as manager of West Ham, and in the end, Villa come back and win it 2-1, albeit maybe slightly controversially. Even after that game, I don't think Villa have been great. They went to Everton, and that was a bit of a disjointed performance. Obviously, they get the win in the end. But Everton had some chances, probably could have got at least a point in that one. They go to Arsenal, they get a big point, but again, I'm not sure the performance was terrific. And then they go to Monaco in midweek in the Champions League and get beat. It all just feels a bit flat around Aston Villa at the minute. And you could probably level the same at West Ham because they're out of both cup competitions. They're not really in any danger of going down, not really in any danger of trouble in the European places. So for Graham Potter, it's just about finding a rhythm again. And with so many players out as well for Graham Potter, you know, they've got Bowen out, Antonio, Fulkrug's out, they've got Mavropanos and Todibo missing at the back. How as a team do you get them up for this one when there's not an awful lot riding on it? You know, it's going to be really difficult. And for that reason, I'm going to back an Aston Villa win. Just because I think Villa need to win to keep the pressure on those Champions League places. They need to stay in the hunt for that. So I think Villa have got an awful lot more riding on this than West Ham do. And some may say that might give West Ham a bit of a freedom. I do think it'll be a tight game because West Ham have not been great going forward recently. Obviously without Bowen and Antonio, that's inevitable. But defensively, they have been quite a bit stronger, I would say. I think that's a focus for Graham Potter, isn't it? When he came in, they were third or fourth worst defence in the league. So he's obviously put a real focus and priority on improving that and trying to get the shape right at the back. So I think we might see a low-scoring one. I think Villa might just pinch it in the end. 2-1. Aston Villa 2, West Ham 1. Let me know what you think. Final game on Sunday comes from Craven Cottage with Fulham taking on the worst Manchester United side in history, according to Ruben Amorim. I've got to say, Fulham have been very inconsistent recently. Maybe not as inconsistent as Manchester United, but they have been inconsistent. And they won last week at Leicester. That was a big performance for them, big win to get them maybe just back into that conversation about the European places, whether or not they could make it, but certainly they're close enough that they could certainly get themselves back into it with a couple of wins. And they'll fancy their chances against United. They really will fancy their chances, especially after seeing the performance that United put in against Rangers in midweek. You know, it takes an own goal for them to break Rangers down, and they very nearly throw it away at the end. Obviously, they lose to Brighton last game week at Old Trafford. They're just not in a good place at the moment, Manchester United. You know, they're sat in 13th in the Premier League table, and depending on how results go here and elsewhere this game week, they could be as high as 11th or as low as 15th. You know, defensively, for the most part, they've been alright under Ruben Amorim, but going forward, they found it really difficult, you know, especially on the road. They've played 10 games away in the Premier League this season, scored 10 goals, picked up 10 points. And Fulham are a really difficult side to beat at Craven Cottage. You know, they're on a run of 5 unbeaten, albeit 4 of them are draws. Man United, on the other hand, have got 6 defeats in their last 9 Premier League games. So I think if you're a betting man, then Fulham or draw looks really good value in this one. I think that Rangers game in midweek will have taken a lot out of United as well, and Fulham will certainly be the fresher of the two going into this one. So the Liverpool fan in me thinks that Fulham might just edge this, but I think my head's going to rule this one, and I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going to go Fulham 1, Manchester United 1. Let me know what you think. Do you think Fulham can pinch this one? And that's that for the Game Week 23 prediction show. Don't forget to let me know in the comments below what your predictions are. I'm really excited to see them. Thanks again for watching, as always. I really appreciate it. And if you like this sort of thing, if you like football, if you're a football dad like me, if you're a football nerd like me, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, all the good stuff. It really helps the channel. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.